This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN.
Look, there is no need for me to introduce the extraordinary brilliance of Robert De Niro when it comes to his portrayal of psychologically complex and often intense characters, especially under the helm of the legendary Martin Scorsese. I mean, we could argue endlessly over which of his performances truly deserves the title of most terrifying. Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, Mean Streets. Hell, most people forget he even played Frankenstein's monster. However, a role that's often overlooked despite his Academy Award nomination is one that's so repulsive, diabolical, sadistic, and so brutally realistic that there were times I genuinely wanted to look away. That was his portrayal of the psychopathic ex-con Max Cady in Scorsese's 1991 remake, Cape Fear. And yes, there was a Simpsons episode that parodied the entire film. Cape Fear tells the story of the Bowden family, who become terrorized by a recently released violent sex pest called Max Cady, who seeks vengeance on his former lawyer Sam Bowden for his role in Cady's imprisonment for the battery and statutory rape of a 16-year-old girl. Upon discovering evidence that suggested Cady was unaware of the girl's age, which could have reduced his sentence or acquitted him altogether, Sam willingly chose to purge his ethical responsibility to his client for the sake of moral justice by burying the evidence to ensure Cady received his comeuppance for such a heinous crime. Cape Fear isn't the most conventional of thrillers because, while it does have all the suspenseful elements that make for a brutally intense conflict, it's just as much of a gritty legal drama that questions our understanding of law and the justice system and how much of it is impacted by our own morals and emotions. Cady's vengeance is his twisted way of exacting his own form of justice. Having discovered Sam refused to uphold his human rights during his prosecution, Cady spent his 14 years incarcerated, educating himself extensively on the law, even going as far as to represent himself during several unsuccessful appeals. When he emerges from prison with fire in his eyes and a seething lust for punishment, it's not just his barbaric violence that Sam rightfully condemned that we need to worry about. It's his ferocious Ted Bundy-esque intelligence, charm, and sleazy seduction that allows him to slither about without any legal means to stop him. It's a very confrontational film, quite literally in fact. Every scene is basically a tense standoff between characters, tearing apart each other's flaws and vulnerabilities, where you're just waiting for Cady to climb out of your television to pummel the shit out of you. Hell, having recently watched Better Call Saul, I wouldn't be surprised if Tony Dalton got a lot of his inspiration from De Niro's performance to play Lalo Salamanca. He's calm, composed, articulate, and weirdly polite, but you know damn well beneath him he has no fucking soul. I'm no expert of course, but ignorantly speaking, it feels like a very realistic depiction of a psychopath. He doesn't go around indiscriminately killing people or watching over the Bowdens as they sleep to provide some sort of cinematic dramatization. It's a very slow and meticulous build-up where his shadow over the family grows insidiously closer and closer as his perversion and depravity intensify. Put it this way, on one end you have Norman Bates, and on the other you have Patrick Bateman, but smack dab in the middle is Max Cady. Now, just before we go any further, here are a few words from this video's sponsor, ExpressVPN. In this day and age, having absolute privacy online is almost impossible, but thanks to ExpressVPN, you can keep all your personal shenanigans to yourself. It's often easy to forget that your internet service provider can see literally everything that you do, and without a VPN, it's possible for large corporations, snoopers, and even government agencies to exploit your exposed data for profit and other nefarious means. ExpressVPN essentially takes all that data you send through cyberspace and encrypts it in a secure tunnel to prevent third parties intercepting it. It's like having a big snuggly blanket to keep you safe and warm while also acting as a massive force field to ward off evil. Believe it or not, I still have friends and family who use incognito mode because they think it actually hides their search history, and you know what kind of history I'm talking about. However, that's just not how it works. Your ISP can still see everything you're up to. It's like having a strict, judgmental, watchful eye preventing you from just peacefully enjoying your life. ExpressVPN has received constant praise for its reliability and ease of use, which simply requires you to download the app and click connect, allowing you to surf the web with peace of mind. With a 30-day money-back guarantee, take back your internet privacy today and find out how you can get 3 months free by clicking the link below in the description or visiting expressvpn.com/Ryan. Scorsese's approach to the remake seems to mirror the same petrifying provocativeness that Hitchcock brought to thrillers via Psycho. In fact, funnily enough, stylistically, Cape Fear is very classically produced like a 50s-60s Hitchcockian thriller, with Psycho's original title designer Saul Bass even being hired to set the same brooding tone as he did for Scorsese's Goodfellas the year before. There's this constant debate I keep seeing online where people argue where the line is between thriller and horror, and much like Psycho, you could say Cape Fear treads that line very lightly by committing fully to the thriller genre, but occasionally stepping over the boundary to keep you on edge. Compared to the 1962 original and the book it was based on, this version of Cape Fear is unforgivingly hopeless at times, as if it were framed from the wickedly gleeful perspective of Max Cady. However, the most interesting and deeply distressing thing about Cady's actions and behaviours is that he doesn't technically break any laws in the way he navigates around Sam and his family. For example, he's able to watch the family from the comfort of a wall overlooking the house, but because he's not on their property, it doesn't constitute trespassing, and thus there's no case for legal intervention. The point it bluntly makes is that in all cases, we and Sam might know he's clearly committing crimes like poisoning the family dog, but without proof, there's nothing we can do about it. One of the most disturbing scenes is when Cady seduces Sam's assistant Lori, whom Sam has a flirtatious relationship with, and upon brutally beating and assaulting her, she refuses to testify against Cady out of fear of judgment and stigmatization from her peers and the public. That's on top of the fear of retaliation from Cady, who essentially controls his victims through the mere presence of his freedom. He gets under your skin because he's done his time and now relishes in being able to do terrible things within the law. Morally, we know what he's up to, but again, legally, without that evidence, it's all speculation. As Sam's legal colleague declares, you can't arrest someone for something you cannot see. It's about what you can prove, not what you think you know. Now, I'm no legal eagle, so I can't exactly give you an accurate breakdown of the legalities of Cady's actions. This all comes purely from my perspective as a movie watcher, but you can still identify the inherent complexity and often unfair nature of the justice system. The film presents the idea that laws are arbitrary and are filled with loopholes and contradictions that make them easy to manipulate or nefariously dismantle for self-gain. Sam knows this, and his stress comes from the fact that he's helpless unless Cady makes a mistake. As a result, Sam is encouraged to read between the lines of the local lieutenant played by Robert Mitchum, who played Cady in the 1962 original, to take the law into his own hands until Sam's hearing for a restraining order takes place. He ends up hiring a private investigator to watch over Cady and even attempt to intimidate him, but Cady continues to act within law in a taunting nature, hanging the legal system over everyone's head to demonstrate how futile our perception of justice can be. There's a particular point made about how laws are designed to protect us and our rights, but that's also true even for the worst humanity has to offer, which is exactly what Cady uses as his justification to exact revenge. Morality be damned, a society might constitute what is good and bad, but unfortunately law and order is rarely enforced in such a manner. Justice is sometimes no more served when good people are just as likely to fall victim to the system as bad people are at getting away with it thanks to the cracks within it. Perhaps the most fucked up thing that separates Max Cady from other genre villains is simply the reminder that what protects him and gives him his power is the very law itself. And even when the hearing about the restraining order does begin, Cady hires the fucking lawyer involved in it. Sam gets to the point of desperation and hires a bunch of thugs to beat and scare Cady out of town, but Cady ends up winning the fight and then uses his wounds as a means to play up Sam as a paranoid paranoid threat to Cady, thus the restraining order is in favour of Cady's protection. Essentially, Cape Fear sees Cady practically win at every turn in frankly harrowing ways, but as we enter into the second half spoilers, we finally see Cady act upon the very thing we anticipated from the very beginning. Like with many Scorsese flicks, Cape Fear carries a biblical overtone in which Cady condemns Sam for his own personal falsehood, even suggesting vengeance is within God's will. There's an idea that's conveyed that those who are the most morally righteous can sometimes be the ones hiding the biggest sins, or at least we're often quite selective of when our moral righteousness takes effect. Sam is no saint. While we wholeheartedly sympathize with his predicament to tamper with Cady's evidence to protect the purity and innocence of those that remind him of his daughter, Sam also exposes himself as a selfish hypocrite who undermines his own moral standards by actively encouraging Laurie's flirtation and taking advantage of that naive innocence he wanted to protect, thus showing unfaithfulness to his own wife and daughter, effectively tearing apart his own family when Cady enters the picture. There's also the question of whether Sam's supposed moral superiority justifies his own unlawful violence against Cady, whose mission ultimately seems to be serving justice removed from moral intervention, as completely twisted as he is. Eventually, after a grueling, uncomfortable scene in which Cady harasses Sam's daughter, Sam's PI suggests tricking Cady into entering their property so they can use the stand your ground law to lawfully execute Cady. The plan quickly backfires when Cady pulls a pre-Mrs. Doubtfire and gruesomely strangles the PI, forcing the family to flee to their boathouse at Cape Fear River. It's at this point we see Cady brutally confront the family as a powerful storm crashes them downriver, like a symbolic gesture of Cady's godly wrath. There's actually a false ending played out in which Sam's daughter manages to set Cady alight, causing him to fall overboard, but he comes right back from hell to further torment the family. The storm soon causes the boat to sink, leading to Sam and Cady fighting, until just before Sam finishes the job, Cady is washed away and slowly drowns, leaving a deliberately unsatisfying feeling to it. You could say there's an irony in which justice is served by natural force rather than the hands of man, somewhat allowing Cady to go out his own way. Sure, Sam and his family survive, but they're left traumatized and far more fractured than they were before. It's as if Cady's shadow continues to linger over them. He relished in their torment, and that's exactly the scars he leaves them with. As the film ends with Sam's daughter Danielle bookending her ordeal, her perspective defines what true terror ultimately is. It's not just what happens in the moment that scares us, it's the everlasting legacy of distress it leaves us with. And that concludes Cape Fear. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Please leave your thoughts in the comments below, including what films I should cover next. And until next time, stay safe, stay away from boathouses, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye!